Hi, fourth graders. Today we are going to review what we have already learned about comparing fractions. We have learned 3 different strategies so far. We will go through each one and do a practice. The first strategy we learned is how to compare fractions using drawings. We learned that you have to draw your wholes of the same size, then to divide your wholes into equal parts, and shade in the amount for each fraction. In this case, it is 1/2 and 3/4. As you can see, 1/2 is less than 3/4. The next day we learned that drawing isn't always accurate. So we learned that you can compare numerators and denominators when denominators are the same and when numerators are the same. First, let's compare denominators. When your denominator is the same, that means that your whole is divided into the same number of pieces. You can see that 2/5 is less than 4/5 because they are the same size pieces and you have more of the same size pieces. Let's look at 1/4 and 3/4. The same whole with the same size pieces. You can see that you only have 1 of the 4 pieces here and you have 3 of the 4 pieces here. Therefore, 1/4 is less than 3/4. Let's look at comparing numerators. If the fractions have the same numerator, the one with the smaller denominator or the smaller size pieces is the greater fraction. Look at this first example. You have 1/6, that means your whole is cut into 6 equal pieces, and you have 1/2, that means your whole is cut into 2 equal pieces. 1/6, the pieces are smaller, so you only have 1 of the 6 pieces, where in 1/2 the pieces are bigger. So you have 1 of 2 pieces. When you only have 1 of 6 pieces, that piece is smaller, therefore 1/6 is less than 1/2. Let's look at 2/3 and 2/8. In 2/3 you have 3 equal pieces, in 2/8 you have 8 equal pieces. When you have 2 of 3 equal pieces, you have more than when you only have 2 of 8 equal pieces because the pieces are smaller. Therefore, 2/3 is greater than 2/8. Now let's look at the last way we learned to compare fractions to benchmarks like 0, 1/2, and 1/2. We are going to use reasoning. Let's look at the examples. 1/4 and 5/8. Think 1/4 is less than 1/2, but 5/8 is greater than 1/2 because 4/8 is half. 1/4 is less than 5/8. Let's look at 9/10 and 2/6. 9/10 is almost a whole and is greater than 1/2. 2/6 is less than 1/2. So 9/10 is greater than 2/6. Let's look at the examples. We have 1/6 and 3/4. 1/6 is closer to 0 and 3/4 is more than half. So 1/6 would be less than 3/4. Okay. Let's look at 5/8 and 1/9. 5/8 is more than half because 4/8 is half. 1/9 is closer to 0. So 5/8 is greater than 1/9. Let's look at 7/8 and 2/4. 7/8 is almost the whole. 2/4 is half. 7/8 is less than 2/4. Now let's look at 4/12 and 7/10. 4/12 is less than half because 6/12 is half. 7/10 is more than half because 5/10 is half. 4/12 is less than 7/10. Let's do some practice. We will try to do an example of each strategy. Let's look at 1/3 and 1/6, where the numerators are the same. In 1/3, you have 1 of 3 pieces. In 1/6, you have 1 of 6 pieces. In 1/3, the pieces are larger. So you have one of the larger size pieces. So 1/3 is greater than 1/6. Let's look at 3/4 and 1/4. They have the same denominator, so that means that they have the same size pieces. I have 3 of the 4 pieces or 1 of the 4 pieces. 3/4 is more than 1/4. Now let's try one that has a different numerator and different denominators. Let's look at 4/8 and 2/10. 4/8 is equal to half. 2/10 is less than half. So 4/8 is greater than 2/10. Now that you've finished watching this video, you are going to click the assignment slides and complete 4 slides to review how to compare fractions. Try to challenge yourself and pick at least 1 slide from the last 3 slides. That includes word problems. Good luck,